Well, I've only been putting this off for, almost 2 weeks now? Fan service. There's a lot more to it than most people think, but that partially has to do with the kind of stigma attached to it, I think. After all, when you hear the word fan service, what's the first thing that comes into your head? You don't even have to tell me. I already know what's probably going through your head immediately. Now, what fan service actually is material in a work of fiction or fictional series which is intentionally added to please the audience. This can range from cheeky references to other works to exactly what you think, among a lot of other things. And I'll have a couple examples in a minute here. One example that immediately comes to my mind is actually the Super Smash Bros. Series. After all, if you didn't know, that game was originally going to have completely original characters until it was decided, from what I understand, relatively last minute to use pre-existing Nintendo characters, although later they would get some non-Nintendo characters in there. But that, in my opinion, just adds to the fan service, because now you get to see people like Sonic, Mega Man, and Cloud all kick the crap out of people from like Fire Emblem or Mario or Kirby, which has no real necessity, I suppose. It's there, it's kind of cool. And it definitely made fans of various game series happy when they got to see their character brought into Smash Brothers. Like, for me personally, I don't really play the game. I'm terrible at the game, but there are still some characters in there that I like, and on the rare occasion that I do play it, I'm going to play characters that I actually like because, well, that's kind of the point. Now, unfortunately, we in the West tend to focus on one particular part of fan service that mostly has to do with what some might call sexual exploitation, particularly of the female form, as it were. But this is by far and away not the only form of fan service out there, but it's the one that tends to get the most focused on, especially in the West, and even more especially the United States. I'm not entirely sure why it's still such a taboo thing, but yet the thing is that while this gets, shamed and stigmatized, there are other kinds of, similar styled fan service that not only gets a complete pass, but sometimes is outright praised, which, in my opinion, is completely hypocritical and, frankly, pisses me off quite a lot to see, one thing that, a lot of people get stigmatized and shamed, but yet something else that's pretty much the same thing, just slightly different, not only get, a complete pass, but praised. And I definitely know that I'm not the only one who feels this way, but I'll explain what I mean in a second here. Now, when it comes to fan service, obviously, like I said earlier, one of the most common ones that comes into people's heads is something like, say, I don't know, Senran Kagura, or a lot of dating games out there, because, they have, sexy females in, potentially scantily clad clothing and, shit like that. And it just annoys me that that's such a taboo, because that's not really the point of that stuff. Like, take Senran Kagura, for example. That's not the whole point of it. It's, actually a pretty fun little combo-based, I guess, brawler game, for the lack of a better word, but because there's those, fan servicey elements in there, suddenly everybody loses their mind and thinks that it's everything that's wrong with the world, and that, it's proof that all games are marketed towards men, and but yet you get shit like 50 Shades of Grey, which granted isn't a game, but is still, mass media, that gets not only a pass, but is, downright praised. And then you've got a game like, say, Dream Daddy, which, personally, that game just kind of irks me. But then again, most dating games kind of do, because they're not very accurate representations of what dating is actually like. Not that I really know either. But not only was that game full of all of the same stereotypical dating game tropes and fan servicey, BS that most people, if it were any other dating game, would completely shame and stigmatize, but because you're dating a bunch of dudes instead of a bunch of girls, suddenly not only is it perfectly fine, but it gets praised for being a groundbreaking new game that, shakes up the formula, and it's just hypocritical. If you're gonna call out something for being, raunchy or, taboo or whatever you want to call it. If you're going to call something like that out, you don't get to call out only one part of it. You either got to call all of it out or none of it, because otherwise not only do you come off as completely hypocritical, but it clearly shows that you're really just trying to push your own personal agenda, which is just asinine. Because at this, while you may not like something like, say, Senran Kagura, just because it has these more, I guess the more fan servicey things to it, you don't have to like that kind of stuff, because that's part of what fan service is. It's meant to please the fans. If you don't like it, that's, then clearly you're not a fan of it, and it's not meant to please you. Fan service's job is to make people who like that kind of stuff, happy. If you don't like that kind of stuff, then obviously whatever it is you're trying to criticize is not for you. But yet people can't seem to let that go, because everybody nowadays seems to have the mentality of everything I like is good, everything I dislike is bad and needs to be destroyed, and that. No, just stop, okay? If you're gonna criticize one thing for being raunchy or whatever you want to be criticizing it for, if something else does it, but just in a slightly different way, you need to call that out too. Otherwise, you're completely hypocritical. You look like an ass, and you make those of us who actually like the stuff you're trying to stigmatize or shame us for, you make us look bad when really we're just taking advantage of something that's meant for people like us to enjoy. That's part of what fan service is. It's meant to please the fans. If you don't like it, then that's not your problem. You just let us have our fun, and then you can continue doing whatever makes you happy. Another aspect of fan service that doesn't necessarily get mentioned a whole lot, at least not in the West anyway, is, over-the-top, unnecessary violence. Because another thing that I find completely hypocritical is that people will criticize, again, games like Senran Kagura for their more, sexual content, but yet they'll give something like, say, God of War a complete pass for, it's, over the top, blood, guts, and gore that actually, in non-Western markets, is actually the more taboo of the two. Like, for example, here in Japan, a lot of the Western games known for, their big, blood, guts, and gore and that kind of stuff actually gets censored or downplayed. But yet the more sexual stuff is completely okay. Because the thing is, for a lot of the more sexual stuff, people, at least from what I've been able to gather, people outside of the West tend to really understand that it's, one, meant to, not really be taken too seriously, because one, it's fictitious, and two, if, you don't like it, clearly that, it's not meant for you. But yet we in the West, we love our blood, guts, and gore and over-the-top violence, and yet we'll give that a complete pass, because that's okay. That's what we understand as a fantasy not meant to be taken seriously. But then you get something, more, I guess, waifu-y. But yet, somehow we don't seem to understand that that's also a fantasy that's not meant to be taken seriously. The thing is, we, the fans of that kind of stuff, are more than aware of that. But because, most people don't see it that way, we're the ones who get labeled as, weird or cringy or what have you. And that also kind of annoys me. Another thing, too, regarding the same topic is that violence, at least I know for sure in America, we tend to not really care. Like, obviously, we don't really like, people doing nasty, violent shit, in real life, but yet somehow games are just fine. Well, unless you're certain politicians that believe that violent video games make for violent people, but I'm not going to throw my 2 cents in on that debate, because pretty much anybody with a brain that can, we get it. Like, it's a game. It's meant to be fantasy. Like, hell, I'd argue that, violently tearing somebody apart in something like Mortal Kombat prevents people from doing it in real life, because they're able to still vent their frustrations, get the satisfaction of killing something without having to actually kill something. And I still personally say that is a type of fan service, because obviously people enjoy that, especially in, a game setting, because we understand it's fictitious. We can't actually do things like this, and we understand that if we were to try to actually do something like that in real life, we would be severely punished for it. But yet, for some reason, more sexual type stuff, even just like alternate costumes for characters in some games, get labeled as, bad for, influence, or just downright raunchy or taboo or just plain old wrong, and people who like that stuff are weird. And no, it's the same thing. Like I've been saying for pretty much the whole video, if you find something fan servicey, be it a reference or a tasteful side boob, or like one of the, I don't know, like the classic Sub-Zero fatality of ripping a head off or something. If you don't like that kind of stuff, then it's not meant for you. That's the point. It's meant to please the fans and people who enjoy that kind of stuff. If you don't like it, whatever. That's not your problem. Just leave it alone. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it has no right to exist. Hell, with a lot of this kind of stuff, there are a lot of people who put a lot of time, effort, love, and care into making this kind of stuff for people to enjoy, just to have some person on the other side of the world, or even in the same country, completely all over it simply because they don't like it and they disagree with its existence. It's not meant for you. If you're gonna criticize something, that's completely fine, but that doesn't mean you have to label it as completely wrong. If you don't like it, just leave it alone. If it's not physically hurting anybody, who cares? Just let the fans enjoy what they're given. That's what it's for. Now, I know I ranted for a good bit, and actually a little longer than I intended to, but I hopefully was able to help you better understand, one, what fan service is, number two, the hypocrisy of people who try to call it out, because they'll only call out one aspect of it. But at the same time, I really wanted to make just one point. Just one point. If you take nothing else away from this video, just take away this. Just let people enjoy things. If it's not hurting anybody, what does it bother you? If you don't like it, then just leave it alone. Obviously, there are people that do like it, especially if it's something that's got a franchise behind it. Obviously, it's popular enough, and enough people like it that they're able to make more. If you don't like it, you don't have to interact with it. Just leave it be. And again, just let people enjoy things.